In this video, we will add a map to the SYN port, and we will perhaps create a summary of our data. So in the prior video, we actually created a FTP SYN port, and we sent the same standard PO to our FTP site. In this video, we'll actually stick a map between here and here, so that when the data goes out, it will get remapped to yet another file format, and that file format will be stored on the FTP site. And so the scenario here is kind of a contrived one, but I basically created a file, a schema layout called FTP Purchase Order Summary. And I'm just going to have the customer name, the total, and the date and time received. And I'm assuming, for instance, oftentimes BizTalk is used for EAI, which is Enterprise Application Integration. So for instance, maybe you want to send a file to your SAP system or your customer CRM, customer management system. And so that system only needs a summary of the data. So you might need the full data for one system, and if this is another system, you might just need a summary of the data. So what you can do is actually on the way out to that system, you just remap the data at that point, create the summary data, and then send it. So that's what we'll be doing in this video. We'll use this schema that I just created here called FTP PO Summary. And so we'll need to build this project. And then we'll need to go back to our maps, and we'll create a third map here. So we'll say add new item, map, and then we'll call it FTP PO Summary. Actually, no, we always call it map, and then something to something. So standard PO to FTP PO Summary. And so we already have our references set, so we can click Open Source Schema and go to References PO Schemas. And that's why we had to do the build, so that we would see the new file here. So it's FTP PO Summary. Actually, that's where we're mapping to. So our source is going to be the standard purchase order. Okay, on the right side, this will be our FTP summary, which is that schema. And so this is a very simple map. All we got to do is take date, time received, the customer name will probably be from the bill to, and the order total. Okay, one of the schemas we did earlier, we actually had a field here called order total, but this one we don't actually have that field. So how are we going to get the order total? Well, this will give us another example to show a mapping feature. So we'll go back here to the functoids in the toolbox, and I'll temporarily close the sidebars over here. So we can actually summarize data from down at this level. So we actually have to take the quantity times the price and then summarize that. So we need to do a multiplication here. So we need to find multiply quantity times price, and then we need to summarize that, which will be the summarization functoids, which are called the cumulative sum, and we want to add that up and create the order total. So now we need to test if this map works. So now we need our toolbar back over here. So we click on the map. We need our data input file, which is going to be what? A standard PO. So which one of these is our standard PO? So actually right now I'm looking in this directory and I don't see any standard POs because I think we've always been mapping to it. There's the schema for it. But if we go back to maybe this, there's a standard PO. So I'm actually going to take this, copy it back over here, and then we'll rename it to something more reasonable. So we'll call this let's call it the same name as the schema, STD purchase order, and then like instance1.xml. That way, when in this utility, of course, like DOS or like Windows, I can sort by extension, and then I can see all my XML files together, or I can sort by name, and then you can see the schema and its corresponding XML file side by side. Now if you browse this, you'll notice it's not formatted, and I'll just show you a quick little trick here. If you want to format your XML, if you've installed XML Notepad on your computer, I don't think I have it installed here. I'm used to doing this on my work computer. So I'll actually show you that in a future video. So now that's our file we want to test with. So let me get the name of it here. And now we'll go test our map. So we go back to our map project, right click our map properties. Instead of generate instance, we want to read an XML file. And we want to test with this data file. I paste right here. And then we right click test map. Okay, it says exception caught. The map has empty source and destination schemas. That's kind of weird. So I think the way to fix that is I'm going to do a build. And then we'll do test map again. We do have an error here. The map has empty source and destination schemas. That doesn't seem to be true. That's a very strange error. So let's try rebuild this time. At that time it says rebuild all succeeded. So that's just one of those funky things. I don't exactly know what was happening. So now we'll do test map again. This time it looks like it worked, and we follow over here to the right, looking for the output is stored in the following file. And again, it's a temp file on your disk, so the easiest thing to do is hold the control key down and click on it. And there's our summary. And now we need to do what's called, I call a sanity check. Is $188.93 the correct amount here? Okay, so if we go back and look at our data file, it seems like to me that 188.93 was just one of the products. No, that's actually the sum of those two products. Okay, and if we wanted to test it further, we could put a quantity of 2 here and then test it again. So let's actually do that. Quantity, let's put 2 of these and let's put 3 of these. And we go back and test the map again. And we should probably close this file before we reopen the next one. Otherwise we'll get confused. And anyway, it's a larger number, so we would actually get the pencil or the calculator out and see if that math is working properly, but it looks more or less like it is. So now I want to associate this map to the FTP port. So remember where we're headed in this demo here. Let's go back to our Visio. We already had an FTP port, and it was sending the full standard PO here. But now I want to summarize the PO and just send a couple of summary items instead of the whole purchase order. So we're going to go to BizTalk admin console, which is not open. BizTalk server admin. So what I want to do is find the send port here, and I want to add the map to it. But remember, before we do this, we have to do 2 things. We have to redeploy our Visual Studio solution, and then we have to refresh. So let's do a deploy solution so that map will get into the database and into the GAC, the Global Assembly Cache. Okay, I paused the video for just a few seconds to deploy finished correctly. Now we go back here and we want to refresh so that it picks up these new maps and entities from the database. Then we want to go to send ports, and here we're going to go to demo map out FTP, and then we're going to go to outbound maps, and we're going to choose from the list. It's interesting, you can choose the source document or you can choose the map, whichever you prefer. And so I want to choose map standard PO to FTPO summary, and that's pretty much it. Close that. And then we need to restart BizTalk host instance because we did do a deploy. And then while that's going, I'll come over here, I'll go to the map demo in, And then this is the name of the file I want to drop. Let's make sure the restart finished, and it did. So now I'm going to drop this file. No, I don't want to drop a standard file. Actually, I want to drop a file like what we were doing earlier. So I have to go to the generated maps directory. We're kind of assuming here right now that nobody sends us a standard PO. Standard PO is our internal format, and our customers are sending us formats of various types. So let's take this complex order here, and let's actually change it. Let's put complex order 2, and we'll just make a couple little changes here. So I'll do it offline. Okay, so what I've added here, just so we can do the math later, a simple number: 1 weed killer at $40 and 2 gnomes at $10. So that should be a $60 order. The total amount here I just actually set to 0 because we're not using it. And the guy's name is John Yard because he's doing yard work. Okay, so we're going to drop that file into our map in. Then we're going to go to HAT and see if we have any errors or not. Query most recent 100. What a shock. We do have an error. So let's do the message flow. A failure with the pipeline. Basically what it's saying is here your flat file didn't find what it wanted. And notice it does say it was looking for a carriage return line feed. So I think what the issue there is right here. I think I need a line feed at the very end of the file, which we didn't make that obvious before. So let's drop the same file again now. Back to HAT. Okay, we'll see if we got the same error or a different error. Okay, looks like the same error. The current definition being parsed, the stream offset where the error occurred is 52. The line number is number 2. The column is 23. So we should be able to go to line number 2, column 23, and see what our error is here. That's line 2. Right there, 23. So it looks like well, maybe it's just too many spaces after the word total there. Nope, probably the same error. Okay, I think I found the problem. I reopened the schema here, and it looks like customer num is expecting 7 characters. So apparently the file I was using before, we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So apparently I need at least a space or 2 after the customer number. So the way I would actually correct that in the future, I would come here and I would change this positional length to a different value. But to quickly get around this, I'm going to try just adding a blank at the end of that line. And the way I detected this is I went into hex mode on the file, and I looked at the file that worked, and I looked at this file, and I saw that there were a couple of extra spaces here after the number. So here when I see the 2020, that's ASCII for a space. So now we're going to drop the file again. Didn't seem to have much effect. Okay, the error moved this time. So now the error is on line 1, position 26. Okay. So I don't really like flat files, as you can see here. So line 1, okay, let's look at the schema again. Order date should be 14 characters long. Okay, that seems amazingly long. So I don't think dates are usually 14 characters long, but apparently when we built the file, we did have a bunch of extra spaces at the end there. I'm just going to put a few extras. And again, we'll drop the file again. see if the error moved somewhere else. And we're still error on line 1, column 26. Okay, so we know this date is actually 10 characters. So I think what we need actually here is erase to the end of the line, hit enter, and now put exactly 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. And then we'll do the same thing here. We'll get rid of those spaces, hit enter, and this needs to be 7 characters exactly. Now let's try that and see what happens. Okay, so we got past that. So that does show that the number of spaces there is very important. And so now the error is on line 3, position 22. So let's go back to our schema again and look at line 3, which is the total amount. So right here, that needs to be 8 characters and then the carriage return line feed. So here, we're going to do the same thing. We'll delete, hit enter, and it needs to be 8 characters. So right there we have 6 characters, so we need 2 characters exactly. See, I think XML is actually easier than flat files, 10 times easier. Okay, we're just going to keep doing this till we find all the little errors. The error is now in line 9, position 0. So this is line 8. So maybe again we did not need the space at the end, or the extra line return at the end of the file. And that time we got it. So wow, I apologize for that, but again, this is just things you have to, it's a good way to learn, and you see how some of the oddities of BizTalk actually work. So in a prior video, we'd created this complex schema using a data file that we'd created, and now you notice that when we just took a text editor and changed the data file, that the schema really wasn't very flexible. So that would be something we could put on our list of things to improve in the near future. So we have here 1 file in, and then 2 files out, which again, back to our Visio diagram, the 2 files out should be the map out on the disk and the FTP site. So let's look at the disk first. We have map out. We look at the time. This is 2:55 in the afternoon. And this is our file, the weed killer and the gnome. Okay. Then we're going to go to our FTP site. Here, bring up my FTP function, connect to the FTP site, and look at the dates and times over here. And so again at 2:55, well, my server is actually in a different time zone, so you see there it's 3:55 where my server is. And then if I browse that, you'll see that we got the FTPO summary. John Yard was the name of my customer, and his order did add up to $60 because he had a $40 item and 2 $10 items. And this was the date the order was received, the 12th of November at approximately 2:54 in the afternoon. So that concludes this demo, where basically we added a map to a SYN port so that we could actually change the data on the way out of the system.